Alright, welcome back. I'm going to tie this little white zonker jig that I use from here for my local waters that works really well when they open the spillways. So what I've got in the vise is a size 8 jig hook. The thread I'm using is 30 denier GSP from Vivas. And we're just going to start a real simple little thread base. I missed one and it's not going to matter once it's all said and done. First thing we need is some diamond flat braid, and we're going to leave a little bit sticking out the front. We don't need a lot, just a little. Basically enough so that it goes back to the back of the bend is plenty. This is going to help provide a little bit of taper to the underbody flash, if you will. And we're just going to tie that in along the straight part of the shank. I'm going to bring my thread back forward, right behind the bead. Now I'm just going to wrap this guy going forward. And honestly, the body part gets covered up, so if you got a little sloppy work underneath, it's probably actually not even going to be seen, to be honest with you, but it's a good way to get the effect of the two flashes. When I say two flashes, just these two sticking out front to kind of help build up that underbody. This piece up front's a little bit too long. This one's about right, so we don't want to have this top piece or the front piece, or I'm sorry, the back piece too much longer. So that's plenty right there. And it's just going to help provide a little bit of a taper. So next, what I've got here is a straight cut Magnum white zonker strip. I've cut the tip to a point, and now I'm going to measure this out. I don't usually go more than about a hook shank length out the back, and I'll kind of line this out roughly. I'll give myself just a little bit extra, just so I don't cut it too short, but I lick my fingers and get this stuff out the way so I can get down to the actual hide. There we go. So I've got a piece about like this, and so what I'm going to do now is just kind of figure out where I'm going to stick this hook through. And so I try to line this out just a tad bit over, kind of line my thumb up with it, and I'm going to try to push this through right in the middle of all that meat right there. Now at this point we're actually going to take the hook out of the vise, finish pushing this through, roll it over. Oh, got a hand cramp. Oh no. Carpal tunnel, I guess. Push that up forward and then put the hook back in the vise. And that should give me, yep, right about perfect space. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe an 1/8 of an inch off of this rabbit fur, just so I can tie it in. This really just helps so that it doesn't get too crazy when you're tying in the flash and everything else. So I'm just going to loosely cinch that up and start tying this in going to the back. And you can add a drop of glue here if you like. So we have something about like this. This fly is actually, it's pretty quick tie. This is actually just a little bit longer. I measured that off just a tad, but we can fix that on the back end if, or just leave it, whatever. I got a rabbit hair moving everywhere. Okay, so next up is I'm going to take some silver crystal flash. And we'll just tie this guy right on top. Switch it over. Whoop. Figure 8 this thing. There we go. And just want to make sure I've got all that rabbit hair tied down well. I'm going to bring my thread to the front. I'm going to fold all this flat braid to the back. And now just create that quick little collar, like so. And at this point I'll take my toothbrush and start to pull all that flat braid apart. Just gives a little extra movement. But this works really well when they open that spillway and we have all these little white minnows that come through. I'm not actually sure what they are. but I've just tried to duplicate them on a jig process, and once that happens and those little white minnows come over, they will smash the crap out of these things, which is pretty fun. You can trim this down to size later, so we don't have to worry about that right now. What I got here is just a small schlappen, white schlappen. I'm going to go ahead and strip this fibers off. These stems are a little thin. And once I've got some decent space where I can trim out what I need and build my collar, I'll go ahead and just get rid of that. And we're just going to tie this in soft tackle style. Pretty easy stuff. I want my thread at the back of the collar. You don't want to have your collar too big to leave too much room. But anyhow, and now that I've tied that in, I'm just going to get this little piece, maybe, and just trim that out. And if you got a few extra fibers sticking out, it's not really a big deal. Let's just turn the wrong way. So this is actually a fairly easy fly to tie. Now I'm just going to start to double all this, well, bring it down and then start to double it over. And just wrap this forward in traditional, kind of like a traditional soft tackle collar style. I want to try to get this all the way behind the bead if possible. If you leave a little gap up front, it's not a super big deal. If you don't like the look and you have that gap, you can add some, some ice dub or something. If it's bugging you that much. But I do try to pick this all apart as I'm going. Okay, now I'm up behind the bead. Get my last turnover. Come on, you. There we go. Reverse the stem. And that's pretty much it, to be honest with you. It's not going to snap off for me. And I'll do a quick wet whip. The one thing I don't do is add more rabbit on top of my little white schlop in there. And that's just because it compresses that schlopping down. So if you don't like that little gap, just put in a little bit of dubbing or something. But honestly, it's really not that big of a deal. This is just a fish and fly, and it works well. So last but not least, all we're going to do is get our toothbrush. Just start to brush everything to the back while that glue's setting. And you lick your fingers. Said last but not least, but that's not quite correct because I need to cut that crystal flash, which is out of camera. But I usually just leave, I try to line this up basically with where the rabbit tip ends, maybe just a touch past. So I'm going to go ahead and clip that. And I know you can't see, no, you can't quite see that. It's out of camera a little bit, so I apologize for that. But when it's all said and done, that's it right there. And again, this works really well when they drop the gates and let the water flow, and these little white minnows come over. And you don't have to make this perfect by any means. You just want to make sure you have plenty of throat, so you don't want to over put material there. And the cool thing about this little jig is it really gives a nice profile for basically a minnow. Put that back in the vise and flip it over. You can kind of see it there a little bit better. So other than that, that's how you tie it. I just it's just a jig, right? But this is the one that I kind of came up with, so I call it the Tannycomo white jig. So if you're down in the southern Missouri area, you will kind of get that reference. But other than that, make sure you check us out over at flyvault.net. We've got some cool stuff going on over there, and you can support us that way too by becoming a member and take advantage of the digital tools that we're bringing forward for the fly tying community. Another than that, guys, happy tying, take care, and we'll see you next time.